Section 36 of After Dark. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Jennifer Painter. After Dark by Wilkie Collins. The Professor's Story of the Yellow Mask. Part First, Chapter 1. About a century ago, there lived in the ancient city of Pisa a famous Italian milliner, who, by way of indicating to all customers her familiarity with Paris fashions, adopted a French title, and called herself the Demoiselle Grifoni. She was a wizen little woman, with a mischievous face, a quick tongue, a nimble foot, a talent for business, and an uncertain disposition. Rumour hinted that she was immensely rich, and scandal suggested that she would do anything for money. The one undeniable good quality which raised Demoiselle Grifoni above all her rivals in the trade was her inexhaustible fortitude. She was never known to yield an inch under any pressure of adverse circumstances. Thus, the memorable occasion of her life on which she was threatened with ruin was also the occasion on which she most triumphantly asserted the energy and decision of her character. At the height of the demoiselle's prosperity, her skilled forewoman and cutter-out basely married and started in business as her rival. Such a calamity as this would have ruined an ordinary milliner, but the invincible Grifoni rose superior to it almost without an effort, and proved incontestably that it was impossible for hostile fortune to catch her at the end of her resources. While the minor milliners were prophesying that she would shut up shop, she was quietly carrying on a private correspondence with an agent in Paris. Nobody knew what these letters were about until a few weeks had elapsed, and then circulars were received by all the ladies in Pisa, announcing that the best French forewoman who could be got for money was engaged to superintend the great Grifoni establishment. This master stroke decided the victory. All the demoiselle's customers declined giving orders elsewhere until the forewoman from Paris had exhibited to the natives of Pisa the latest fashions from the metropolis of the world of dress. The Frenchwoman arrived punctual to the appointed day, glib and curt, smiling and flippant, tight of face, and supple of figure. Her name was Mademoiselle Virginie, and her family had inhumanly deserted her. She was set to work the moment she was inside the doors of the Grifoni establishment. A room was devoted to her own private use. Magnificent materials in velvet, silk, and satin, with due accompaniment of muslins, lace, and ribbons, were placed at her disposal. She was told to spare no expense, and to produce, in the shortest possible time, the finest and nearest specimen dresses for exhibition in the show-room. Mademoiselle Virginie undertook to do everything required of her, produced her portfolios of patterns and her book of coloured designs, and asked for one assistant who could speak French enough to interpret her orders to the Italian girls in the workroom. "I have the very person you want," cried Demoiselle Grifoni. "A workwoman we call Brigida here, the idlest slut in Pisa, but as sharp as a needle, has been in France, and speaks the language like a native. I'll send her to you directly." Mademoiselle Virginie was not left long alone with her patterns and silk. A tall woman, with bold black eyes, a reckless manner, and a step as firm as a man's, stalked into the room with the gait of a tragedy queen crossing the stage. The instant her eyes fell on the French forewoman, she stopped, threw up her hands in astonishment, and exclaimed, "Finette!" "Teresa!" cried the Frenchwoman, casting her scissors on the table and advancing a few steps. "Hush! call me Brigida. Hush! Call me Virginie." These two exclamations were uttered at the same moment, and then the two women scrutinized each other in silence. The swarthy cheeks of the Italian turned to a dull yellow, and the voice of the Frenchwoman trembled a little when she spoke again. "How, in the name of heaven, have you dropped down in the world as low as this?" she asked. "I thought you were provided for when—" "Silence!" interrupted Brigida. "You see, I was not provided for. I have had my misfortunes, and you are the last woman alive who ought to refer to them." "Do you think I have not had my misfortunes too, since we met?" Brigida's face brightened maliciously at those words. "You have had your revenge," continued Mademoiselle Virginie, coldly, turning away to the table and taking up the scissors again. Brigida followed her, threw one arm roughly round her neck, and kissed her on the cheek. "Let us be friends again," she said. The Frenchwoman laughed. "Tell me how I have had my revenge," pursued the other, tightening her grasp. Mademoiselle Virginie signed to Brigida to stoop, and whispered rapidly in her ear. The Italian listened eagerly, with fierce, suspicious eyes fixed on the door. When the whispering ceased, she loosened her hold, and with a sigh of relief pushed back her heavy black hair from her temples. "Now we are friends," she said, and sat down indolently in a chair placed by the work table. "Friends!" repeated Mademoiselle Virginie, with another laugh. "And now for business," she continued, getting a row of pins ready for use by putting them between her teeth. "I am here, I believe, for the purpose of ruining the late forewoman, who has set up in opposition to us. Good! I will ruin her. Spread out the yellow brocaded silk, my dear, and pin that pattern on at your end, while I pin at mine. And what are your plans, Brigida? Mind, you don't forget that Finette is dead, and that Virginie has risen from her ashes. You can't possibly intend to stop here all your life. Leave an inch outside the paper all round. You must have projects. What are they?" "Look at my figure," said Brigida, placing herself in an attitude in the middle of the room. "Ah," rejoined the other, "it is not what it was. There is too much of it. You want diet, walking, and a French stay-maker," muttered Mademoiselle Virginie through her chevaux de frise of pins. "Did the goddess Minerva walk and employ a French stay-maker? I thought she rode upon clouds and lived at a period before waists were invented." "What do you mean?" "This, that my present project is to try if I can't make my fortune by sitting as a model for Minerva in the studio of the best sculptor in Pisa." "And who is he? Unwind me a yard or two of that black lace." "The master sculptor, Luca Lomi, an old family, once noble, but down in the world now. The master is obliged to make statues to get a living for his daughter and himself." "More of the lace. Double it over the bosom of the dress. And how is sitting to this needy sculptor to make your fortune?" "Wait a minute. There are other sculptors besides him in the studio. There is, first, his brother, the priest, Father Rocco, who passes all his spare time with the master. He is a good sculptor in his way, has cast statues and made a font for his church, a holy man who devotes all his work in the studio to the cause of piety." "Ah, bah! We should think him a droll priest in France. More pins. You don't expect him to put money in your pocket, surely?" "Wait, I say again. There is a third sculptor in the studio, actually a nobleman. His name is Fabio d'Ascoli. He is rich, young, handsome, an only child, and little better than a fool. Fancy his working at sculpture, as if he had his bread to get by it, and thinking that an amusement. Imagine a man belonging to one of the best families in Pisa, mad enough to want to make a reputation as an artist. Wait, wait! The best is to come. His father and mother are dead. He has no near relations in the world to exercise authority over him. He is a bachelor, and his fortune is all at his own disposal. Going a begging, my friend, absolutely going a begging, for want of a clever woman to hold out her hand and take it from him. Yes, yes, now I understand. The goddess Minerva is a clever woman, and she will hold out her hand and take his fortune from him with the utmost docility. The first thing is to get him to offer it. I must tell you that I am not going to sit to him, but to his master, Luca Lomi, who is doing the statue of Minerva. The face is modelled from his daughter, and now he wants somebody to sit for the bust and arms. Maddalena Lomi and I are as nearly as possible the same height, I hear, the difference between us being that I have a good figure and she has a bad one. I have offered to sit, through a friend who is employed in the studio. If the master accepts, I am sure of an introduction to our rich young gentleman, and then leave it to my good looks, my various accomplishments, and my ready tongue to do the rest. Stop! I won't have the lace doubled on second thoughts. I'll have it single, and running all round the dress in curves, so. Well, and who is this friend of yours employed in the studio? A fourth sculptor? No, no, the strangest, simplest little creature. Just then a faint tap was audible at the door of the room. Brigida laid her finger on her lips and called impatiently to the person outside to come in. The door opened gently, and a young girl, poorly but very neatly dressed, entered the room. She was rather thin and under the average height, but her head and figure were in perfect proportion. Her hair was of that gorgeous auburn colour, her eyes of that deep violet blue, which the portraits of Giorgione and Titian have made famous as the type of Venetian beauty. Her features possessed the definiteness and regularity, the good modelling, to use an artist's term, which is the rarest of all womanly charms, in Italy as elsewhere. The one serious defect of her face was its paleness. Her cheeks, wanting nothing in form, wanted everything in colour. That look of health, which is the essential crowning point of beauty, was the one attraction which her face did not possess. She came into the room with a sad and weary expression in her eyes, which changed, however, the moment she observed the magnificently dressed French forewoman, into a look of astonishment and almost of awe. Her manner became shy and embarrassed, and after an instant of hesitation she turned back silently to the door. "Stop, stop, Nanina," said Brigida in Italian. "Don't be afraid of that lady. She is our new forewoman, and she has it in her power to do all sorts of kind things for you. Look up and tell us what you want. You were 16 last birthday, Nanina, and you behaved like a baby of 2 years old." "I only came to know if there was any work for me to-day," said the girl, in a very sweet voice, that trembled a little as she tried to face the fashionable French forewoman again. "No work, child, that is easy enough for you to do," said Brigida. "Are you going to the studio to-day?" Some of the colour that Nanina's cheeks wanted began to steal over them as she answered, "Yes." "Don't forget my message, darling, and if Master Luca Lomi asks where I live, answer that you are ready to deliver a letter to me, but that you are forbidden to enter into any particulars at first about who I am or where I live." "Why am I forbidden?" inquired Nanina innocently. "Don't ask questions, baby. Do as you're told. bring me back a nice note or message tomorrow from the studio, and I will intercede with this lady to get you some work. You are a foolish child to want it, when you might make more money here and at Florence by sitting to painters and sculptors, though what they can see to paint or model in you I never could understand." "I like working at home better than going abroad to sit," said Nanina, looking very much abashed as she faltered out the answer, and escaping from the room with a terrified farewell obeisance, which was an eccentric compound of a start, a bow, and a curtsy. "That awkward child would be pretty," said Madame Virginie, making rapid progress with the cutting out of her dress, "if she knew how to give herself a complexion, and had a presentable gown on her back. Who is she?" "The friend who is to get me into Master Luca Lomi's studio," replied Brigida, laughing. "Rather a curious ally for me to take up with, isn't she?" "Where did you meet with her?" "Here, to be sure. She hangs about this place for any plain work she can get to do, and takes it home to the oddest little room in a street near the Campo Santo. I had the curiosity to follow her one day, and knocked at her door soon after she had gone in, as if I was a visitor. She answered my knock in a great flurry and fright, as you may imagine. I made myself agreeable, affected immense interest in her affairs, and so got into her room. Such a place! A mere corner of it curtained off to make a bedroom. One chair, one stool, one saucepan on the fire. Before the hearth the most grotesquely hideous unshaven poodle dog you ever saw, and on the stool a fair little girl plaiting dinner mats. Such was the household, furniture and all included. "Where is your father?" I asked. "He ran away and left us years ago," answers my awkward little friend who has just left the room, speaking in that simple way of hers with all the composure in the world. "And your mother?" "Dead." She went up to the little mat plaiting girl as she gave that answer, and began playing with her long flaxen hair. "Your sister, I suppose," said I. "What is her name?" "They call me La Biondella," says the child, looking up from her mat. La Biondella, Virginie, means the fair. And why do you let that great shaggy ill-looking brute lie before your fireplace?" I asked. "Oh," cried the little mat plaiter, "that is our dear old dog, Scaramuccia. He takes care of the house when Nanina is not at home. He dances on his hind legs, and jumps through a hoop, and tumbles down dead when I cry 'Bang!' Scaramuccia followed us home one night, years ago, and he has lived with us ever since. He goes out every day by himself, we can't tell where, and generally returns licking his chops, which makes us afraid that he is a thief. But nobody finds him out, because he is the cleverest dog that ever lived." The child ran on in this way about the great beast by the fireplace till I was obliged to stop her, while that simpleton Nanina stood by, laughing and encouraging her. I asked them a few more questions, which produced some strange answers. They did not seem to know of any relations of theirs in the world. The neighbours in the house had helped them, after their father ran away, until they were old enough to help themselves, and they did not seem to think that there was anything in the least wretched or pitiable in their way of living. The last thing I heard when I left them that day was La Biondella crying 'Bang!' then a bark, a thump on the floor, and a scream of laughter. If it was not for their dog, I should go and see them oftener; but the ill-conditioned beast has taken a dislike to me, and growls and shows his teeth whenever I come near him." "The girl looked sickly when she came in here. Is she always like that?" "No, she has altered within the last month. I suspect our interesting young nobleman has produced an impression. The oftener the girl has sat to him lately, the paler and more out of spirits she has become." "Oh, she has sat to him, has she?" "She is sitting to him now. He is doing a bust of some pagan nymph or other, and prevailed on Nanina to let him copy from her head and face. According to her own account, the little fool was frightened at first, and gave him all the trouble in the world before she would consent. And now she has consented, don't you think it is likely she may turn out rather a dangerous rival? Men are such fools, and take such fancies into their heads." "Ridiculous! A thread paper of a girl like that, who has no manner, no talk, no intelligence, who has nothing to recommend her but an awkward babyish prettiness. Dangerous to me? No, no. If there is danger at all, I have to dread it from the sculptor's daughter. I don't mind confessing that I am anxious to see Maddalena Lomi, but as for Nanina, she will simply be of use to me. All I know already about the studio and the artists in it, I know through her. She will deliver my message and procure me my introduction, and when we have got so far, I shall give her an old gown and a shake of the hand, and then good bye to our little innocent." "Well, well, for your sake I hope you are the wiser of the two in this matter. For my part, I always distrust innocence. Wait one moment, and I shall have the body and sleeves of this dress ready for the needlewomen. There, ring the bell and order them up, for I have directions to give, and you must interpret for me." While Brigida went to the bell, the energetic Frenchwoman began planning out the skirt of the new dress. She laughed as she measured off yard after yard of the silk. "What are you laughing about?" asked Brigida, opening the door and ringing a handbell in the passage. "I can't help fancying, dear, that in spite of her innocent face and her artless ways, that your young friend is a hypocrite." "And I am quite certain, love, that she is only a simpleton." Section 36